Here's a compelling story introduction for your YouTube video. Deep in the vastness of space, where stars paint the darkness like scattered diamonds, humanity had finally made its mark among the cosmos. We weren't alone anymore. Far from it. But sometimes the greatest connections are found in the most unexpected places, and sometimes being human means standing up when everyone else turns away. Staff Sergeant Sarah Chen never expected to find herself as the last line of defense for an alien child. It happened during what should have been a routine peacekeeping mission on Outpost 47, one of humanity's furthest colonies from Earth. The station was a melting pot of different species, a testament to interstellar cooperation, or at least that's what the promotional materials claimed. She first noticed the small figure huddled in the shadowy corner of the station's lower market district. The child's luminescent skin gave off a soft blue glow, marking her as one of the Lyrians, a species known for their natural bioluminescence. But something was wrong. The usual bright patterns that danced across Lyrian skin were dim, barely flickering, a sign of distress that Sarah recognized from her xenobiology training. What struck Sarah most wasn't the child's obvious fear, or even the way other aliens deliberately avoided that corner of the market. It was the complete silence. No one spoke about it. No one helped. Even the usually charitable Centaurians hurried past, their four eyes fixed straight ahead as if the child didn't exist. "Hey there, little one," Sarah said softly, crouching down to appear less intimidating. The child's large, opalescent eyes met hers, and Sarah felt something shift in her chest. Those eyes held a universe of pain, but also a flicker of hope, hope that maybe this time someone would stop, someone would care. The station's artificial day cycle was beginning to dim when Sarah learned the truth. The child, whose name translated roughly to morning light, was considered cursed among her people, born with a rare genetic variation that made her bioluminescence patterns unpredictable. She had been abandoned on the station during a trading stop. Her own people believed she would bring misfortune to any ship that carried her. "I'm not supposed to interfere in alien cultural matters," Sarah said later that night, staring at her reflection in the small bathroom mirror of her quarters. Her commanding officer's words echoed in her head. "This isn't our problem, Sergeant. Let their own kind deal with it." But as she looked down at her worn combat boots, Sarah remembered why she joined the Space Force in the first place. It wasn't just to protect humanity's interests among the stars. It was to prove that humans, despite our flaws and our relatively recent arrival on the galactic stage, could be a force for good in this vast universe. She made her decision. Cultural sensitivity be damned. She wasn't going to let an innocent child suffer, human or not. But as Sarah began to formulate a plan, she had no idea that her choice would spark a diplomatic incident that would test not only her career, but also humanity's place among the stars. What she did know was that somewhere in the station, a little girl's bioluminescence was growing dimmer by the hour, and time was running out. The question wasn't whether Sarah would help. That was never in doubt. The question was, how far would she go to protect this child, and what would it cost her? As she suited up for her next shift, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was about to find out exactly what it meant to be human in an inhuman situation. Sarah's boots echoed through the empty corridors of Outpost 47's maintenance level. She'd chosen this route carefully. Fewer sensors, fewer questions. In her 15 years of service, she'd never gone against direct orders, but there was a first time for everything. The small medkit bounced against her hip as she walked, a reminder of her hastily formed plan. The station's night cycle meant minimal staff, but Sarah still found herself tensing at every distant sound. The consequences of what she was about to do kept playing through her mind. Demotion, dishonorable discharge, possibly even prison time. Yet every time doubt crept in, she remembered those dimming patterns on the child's skin, like a star slowly fading from existence. She'd spent the last few hours researching everything she could about Lyrian physiology. Their bioluminescence wasn't just beautiful. It was vital for their health, linked to their emotional and physical well-being. A Lyrian child with failing light patterns wouldn't just be scared. They would be dying. The market district was different at night. Without the bustle of traders and the glow of vendor stalls, it felt hollow, almost haunted. Sarah found Morning Light exactly where she'd left her, though the child's blue glow had weakened further, barely visible in the darkness. The sight made Sarah's heart clench. "I brought you something to eat," Sarah whispered, pulling out a nutrient pack specifically formulated for Lyrian metabolism. She'd borrowed it from the medical bay's xenobiology stores. Just another regulation broken, but who was counting any more? As Morning Light cautiously accepted the food, Sarah noticed something she'd missed before. Beneath the child's translucent skin, there were patterns she'd never seen in any Lyrian documentation, not random fluctuations, but complex, geometric sequences that seemed to shift and change with purpose. "You're not cursed," Sarah said softly, more to herself than the child. "You're different, maybe even special." She remembered reading about genetic variations in Earth species that were once considered defects but turned out to be evolutionary advantages. Could this be something similar? A sudden movement at the end of the corridor made them both freeze. Sarah's hand instinctively moved to her sidearm, but it was just a maintenance droid making its rounds. Still, they couldn't stay here. The market would be active again in a few hours, and Sarah had seen how the other aliens treated Morning Light. They needed somewhere safe, somewhere private. That's when Sarah remembered the old storage units in Section 8, abandoned after a minor radiation leak last year. The leak had been fixed, but the bureaucratic paperwork to reinstate the section was still pending. It would buy them some time, at least until she could figure out a more permanent solution. But as Sarah helped Morning Light to her feet, she noticed something else. The child's skin patterns briefly synchronized with the lighting panels overhead. It was subtle, barely noticeable if you weren't paying attention, but it was there. Morning Light wasn't just interacting with the station's systems. She was communicating with them. The implications made Sarah's mind race. If the Lyrians knew about this ability, no wonder they were afraid. It wasn't just about unusual light patterns. This child could potentially interface with technology in ways that could revolutionize or devastate their carefully ordered society. A distant alarm startled them both, just the regular night cycle warning, but it served as a reminder that they were on borrowed time. Someone would eventually notice the missing medical supplies. Her commanding officer would realize she wasn't at her assigned post. The station's comprehensive security systems would flag any unauthorized movements. Sarah looked down at Morning Light, whose large eyes reflected the dim emergency lighting above them. She had to make a choice: play it safe and hope someone else would step up to help, or risk everything to protect someone who needed her. But as the child's fingers curled trustingly around her hand, Sarah realized it wasn't really a choice at all. The journey to Section 8 felt like the longest walk of Sarah's life. Every shadow seemed to hide a potential threat, every distant sound a warning. Morning Light moved silently beside her, the child's diminished glow barely lighting their path. But it wasn't just the darkness that worried Sarah. It was the way the station's systems seemed to react to their presence. Lighting panels flickered as they passed, security cameras turned away at just the right moment, and maintenance doors opened without prompting. At first, Sarah thought she was being paranoid, but then she noticed Morning Light's skin patterns pulsing in sync with each malfunction. The child wasn't just passively interacting with the technology, she was actively manipulating it. "You're protecting us, aren't you?" Sarah whispered, earning a small nod from Morning Light. The realization hit her. This wasn't just about saving an abandoned child anymore. This was about something much bigger, something that could change everything we thought we knew about alien species and their capabilities. They were halfway to their destination when the station's alert system suddenly blared to life. "Attention all personnel. Security breach detected in medical bay storage. All security teams report to your stations. This is not a drill." Sarah's heart dropped. They'd discovered the missing supplies sooner than expected. Morning Light's grip on her hand tightened, the child's skin patterns flashing with anxiety. Sarah knew they had minutes, maybe seconds, before security teams would flood the corridors. But something else caught her attention, a subtle vibration through the deck plates, one she recognized from her years of space service. Ships were docking, lots of them. A quick glance at a nearby status panel confirmed her fears. 3 Lyrian vessels had just arrived at the station, far ahead of their scheduled trading window. This wasn't a coincidence. They were looking for morning light, and they'd brought reinforcements. Sarah pulled them into a maintenance shaft just as heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor. Through the grating, she watched as a mixed patrol of station security and Lyrian officials marched past. The Lyrians' skin patterns pulsed with aggressive red and orange hues, hunting colors, if Sarah remembered her training correctly. All units be advised, her commanding officer's voice crackled over the station-wide comm. We have reports of a human officer interfering with Lyrian internal affairs. Apprehend on sight. Consider the subject armed and in possession of a... There was a pause, then, a stolen Lyrian artifact. Artifact. Sarah looked at morning light, whose patterns had shifted to form complex geometric shapes she'd never seen before. The child wasn't scared anymore. She was angry. The lights around them began to flicker more intensely, and Sarah could hear the distant sound of machinery malfunctioning. That's when Sarah understood. The Lyrians hadn't abandoned morning light because they feared her. They'd abandoned her because they couldn't control her. Whatever abilities the child possessed, whatever she could do with technology, they saw her as a thing to be contained, not a child to be protected. But there was nowhere left to run. They were trapped between approaching security teams, with 3 Lyrian ships full of reinforcements outside, and the station's systems going haywire around them. Sarah had sworn an oath to protect humanity's interests among the stars, but right now, protecting this one alien child felt more important than any oath. Morning light's patterns suddenly shifted again, forming what looked like a map of the station. She pointed to a section Sarah had never seen before, somewhere deep in the maintenance levels. The child's intention was clear. She knew a way out, but they'd have to trust each other completely. As alarms blared and boots thundered nearby, Sarah made her decision. She was a soldier, trained to fight, to follow orders, to protect her own. But sometimes being human meant making the hard choice, even if it went against everything you'd been taught. With security closing in and the station's systems going critical around them, Sarah realized they'd reached the point of no return. Following morning light's lead through the hidden maintenance tunnels, Sarah realized the child knew far more about the station than anyone could have guessed. The passages they used weren't on any official blueprints. She'd memorized every schematic during her security training. Yet here they were, navigating through spaces that shouldn't exist. The distant sounds of pursuit faded, replaced by the low hum of the station's core systems. Down here, surrounded by the raw machinery that kept Outpost 47 running, morning light's bioluminescence grew stronger, more focused. Her patterns weren't random anymore. They pulsed in perfect synchronization with the core's energy fluctuations. "Wait," Sarah whispered, holding up her hand. Something wasn't right. The core's rhythm was off, its usual steady beat now erratic. She'd served on enough stations to know that sound. It was building toward a cascade failure. Then she saw morning light's expression, a mixture of determination and regret, and understood. "You're not just hiding from them, are you? You're fighting back." The child's skin flickered in what Sarah had come to recognize as agreement. Every system the Lyrians tried to use to track them, morning light turned against them. Life support, gravity controls, security networks. She wasn't just interfacing with them, she was rewriting them. But the strain was showing. Each manipulation made her patterns dim slightly, like a battery slowly running dry. A sudden explosion rocked the station, nearly knocking them off their feet. Emergency lights bathed the corridor in red as new alarms joined the cacophony above. Warning: primary core containment breach detected. Emergency protocols initiated. The automated voice echoed through the tunnels, but something about it was wrong, distorted, like 2 voices speaking at once. Through the grating above them, Sarah caught fragments of panicked communications. The Lyrian ships were reporting system failures. The station's defensive protocols had activated without authorization. Artificial gravity was fluctuating throughout multiple sectors. It was chaos, exactly what morning light wanted. But before they could move forward, a figure stepped out of the shadows ahead of them. Sarah's blood ran cold as she recognized Dr. Patel, the station's chief xenobiologist. The same doctor who had suspiciously missed every scheduled checkup for Morning Light since her arrival. "Fascinating, isn't she?" Dr. Paddle said, his voice eerily calm amid the chaos. "We thought the Lyrians were just being superstitious when they reported her abilities, but they were right to be afraid. Do you have any idea what we could learn from her? The technological advantages we could gain?" The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. The abandoned child, the conveniently missing doctor, the delayed paperwork to help her. It hadn't been negligence. It had been deliberate. Someone wanted to see what would happen, to study her like a lab specimen. Morning Light's patterns flared with recognition and fear at the sight of the doctor. The lights around them surged, circuits overloading in cascading sparks. But this time, something was different. The child wasn't just affecting nearby systems. Her influence was spreading, growing, connecting with something deeper in the station's architecture. That's when Sarah noticed it. Beneath the chaos of alarms and explosions, a new sound was building. It was like a heartbeat, but mechanical, growing stronger with each pulse. Morning Light's patterns had aligned perfectly with it, creating a resonance that seemed to vibrate through the very walls around them. The station itself was awakening, decades of dormant systems responding to Morning Light's call. But as power surged through long-abandoned circuits, Sarah realized they'd stumbled onto something much bigger than a lost child or a hidden conspiracy. Whatever Morning Light was connecting with, it wasn't part of the original station design. It was something older, something that had been waiting. The entire station shuddered as ancient systems surged to life. Dr. Paddle stumbled backward, his calm facade cracking as panels around them began to glow with the same patterns that danced across Morning Light's skin. Sarah had seen enough combat to know when a situation was about to explode, literally or figuratively. This was both. "You don't understand what you're dealing with," Dr. Paddle shouted over the growing resonance. "This station isn't just a trading post. It's built on top of something else. Something the first explorers found but couldn't comprehend. We've been studying it for years, waiting for someone who could interface with it. She's the key." Morning Light's grip on Sarah's hand tightened as the child's patterns began to shift into configurations Sarah had never seen before, complex, crystalline structures that seemed to ripple through the air itself. The mechanical heartbeat grew stronger, and with each pulse, more of the hidden systems revealed themselves. Walls shifted, exposing ancient corridors lined with technology that looked nothing like human or Lyrian design. "She's not your key," Sarah said, finally understanding. "She's their child. The patterns, the technology, the perfect synchronization. Morning Light wasn't a genetic anomaly. She was exactly what she was meant to be, a bridge between worlds, between past and present." The station's hidden core pulsed one final time, and suddenly they weren't standing in a dark maintenance tunnel anymore. The walls had become transparent, revealing a vast chamber filled with swirling lights that matched Morning Light's patterns perfectly. They were standing in the heart of something far older than human space exploration, older perhaps than the Lyrian civilization itself. Dr. Paddle reached for something in his coat, but before he could act, the floor beneath him simply ceased to exist. He disappeared into a carefully contained gravity well, alive but trapped. Throughout the station, similar fields activated, gently but firmly containing anyone who posed a threat. The Lyrian ships found their weapons suddenly offline, their engines responding only enough to maintain a safe orbit. Morning Light's patterns surged with joy as she communicated with the ancient systems, and for the first time, Sarah heard her voice, not in words, but in patterns of light that somehow translated directly into meaning in her mind. The child wasn't just controlling the technology, she was fulfilling its purpose. The station wasn't meant to be a trading post or a military outpost. It was meant to be a beacon, a meeting point between civilizations. The station's external lights came alive, projecting Morning Light's patterns into space itself. Within minutes, new ships began to arrive, vessels that seemed to be made of light and geometry, their designs echoing the patterns that flowed through the station's ancient core. Morning Light's true people had finally found her. But as the situation stabilized and the immediate danger passed, Morning Light turned to Sarah with an unexpected gesture. the child's patterns formed into what was unmistakably an invitation. The ancient station wasn't just meant to bridge past and present. It was meant to bridge all species who were ready to understand each other. Sarah looked at her reflection in the now transparent walls, her human uniform looking strangely out of place among the swirling lights and ancient technology. She had set out to save a child, but in doing so, she had helped humanity stumble into something far greater. As morning light's patterns swirled around her, Sarah realized that sometimes the biggest discoveries don't come from grand explorations or military might, but from simple acts of kindness. The choice she faced now wasn't about duty or regulations anymore. It was about taking the next step, about proving that humanity was ready for more than just trading posts and military outposts among the stars. As the ancient station hummed with new life around them, Sarah made her decision, one that would change not just her future, but humanity's place in the galaxy forever. 6 months after the events at Outpost 47, Sarah stood before the United Earth Council, her dress uniform feeling stiff and formal compared to the living light patterns she'd grown accustomed to. The chamber was packed with representatives from every human colony and space station, all eager to hear firsthand about humanity's first contact with what the media had dubbed the Luminous Ones. The integration hadn't been easy. There had been fears, protests, and plenty of bureaucratic headaches. Dr. Patil and his conspirators faced justice, revealing a network of secret research that had spanned multiple species and stations. The Lyrians, faced with the truth about Morning Light's origins, had begun their own journey of reconciliation, discovering that several of their cursed children were also connected to the ancient network of stations scattered throughout the galaxy. But today wasn't about politics or revelations. Sarah was here to report on something more fundamental, the ongoing cultural exchange program she now headed. Morning Light, as it turned out, had been right to invite her that day. The ancient stations weren't just technological marvels. They were teaching tools designed to help different species understand each other at the deepest level. The station network isn't just about advanced technology or strategic positions in space, Sarah explained to the council. It's about connection. Every pattern, every pulse of light, carries stories spanning millennia. The Luminous Ones didn't abandon these stations. They left them as gifts, waiting for other species to evolve enough to understand them. She thought about Morning Light, now thriving among her true people but still maintaining regular contact. The child had grown stronger, her patterns more complex and beautiful than ever. She had become a bridge not just between technologies, but between cultures, teaching human children to understand the language of light while learning human stories and songs in return. The station itself had transformed. What was once Outpost 47 was now Unity Point, the first joint operation between humans, Lyrians, and the Luminous Ones. The ancient technology didn't just facilitate trade or scientific research. It helped different species understand each other's perspectives, emotions, and ways of thinking. We've discovered 17 more stations so far, Sarah continued, each one waiting to be awakened. But the real discovery isn't the technology or even the historical knowledge they contain. It's the reminder that in this vast universe, the greatest power isn't in our weapons or our defenses. It's in our willingness to protect those who need help, to stand up for what's right, even when it seems like we're standing alone. As Sarah concluded her report, her uniform sleeves shifted, revealing the slight shimmer of biocompatible light patterns that now traced her skin, a gift from the Luminous Ones, allowing her to better communicate with their technology. It was a mark of trust, of bridge building between species. But more than that, it was a reminder of that moment in a dark corridor when a human soldier and an alien child chose to trust each other despite every reason not to. That night, as Sarah prepared to return to Unity Point, she received a transmission, a pattern of lights that danced in the air before forming into Morning Light's familiar signature. The child had learned to write in human languages, but she still preferred to communicate through light patterns, which could convey so much more than words. The message was simple but profound. An invitation to a celebration. The Luminous Ones had discovered another station, and this time they wanted representatives from all species to be present for its awakening. As Sarah watched the patterns fade, she smiled, remembering her own first steps into this larger universe. Sometimes the greatest adventures don't start with grand explorations or battlefield heroics. Sometimes they start with a simple choice to help someone in need, to stand up when others look away. As humanity took its place among the stars, Sarah knew that this compassion, this willingness to reach across the boundaries of species and space, was our true strength. It all began with an abandoned child and a human soldier who chose to care. And in that choice, both humanity and the stars themselves were forever changed.